In this tutorial we are going to create a Travis Scott type CD cover. Hello and welcome guys, ArmaganVideos here, and today with a new tutorial. So yeah, the Travis Scott type CD cover. This tutorial is focused all around Photoshop. We're going to use masks, brushes and smart objects to basically create a lot of photo manipulation to recreate the vintage and old kind of looking effect or CD cover that I've showed you in the beginning. Travis Scott often uses very vintage and old looking effects on his artworks. They're very grainy and looking post-apocalyptic, so make sure to check them out in case you haven't. For example, his latest tour graphics. I hope you are really going to enjoy this tutorial, and if you do, make sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for new tutorials, make sure to contact me on Facebook, or if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment box below. I'm literally going to answer every single comment. And let's jump right into the tutorial. So there we are in Photoshop. Let's click on new and create a new document with a width and height of 1500 pixels. And the resolution of 72 ppi, and disable the artboards, and let's give it a name, Travis Scott tutorial. Click on create, and let's click on this little icon right here and select solid color so that we have a dynamic background. I'm going to make it white and call it background. Now double click on the old background, hit OK and delete this because we don't want this. This is not dynamic. Here we can change the color really quick. So next up, let's drag in our image of the parental advisory explicit content advice and make sure to shrink it down by holding Ctrl and T. And while you're shrinking, make sure to hold down Shift so it constrains its proportions while you are making it smaller. And if you're having problems with the shortcuts, make sure to check out the description for a little translation from OS X to Windows keys. Let's double click on this layer, go to color overlay and make sure to set it to normal blend mode and give it this color. I'm using this red right here. You can see the color code and just copy it if you want to use it as well. Let's zoom in by pressing Ctrl and 1 or Command and 1. Let's drag in our little grainy texture right here. Right click, create clipping mask onto our advice there, and you can't see it because you have to make it a smart object. So select our texture right there and go to, where do we have it? Screen. So now you can actually see through it. You can see the little white dots, which make the parental advice a little bit more texturized and dirty. We're going to use this technique throughout the whole tutorial, so make sure that you get it right. Let's select our texture and make it a bit smaller again by pressing Ctrl and T and drag it along to get a nice place for it. I want the O to look a bit distorted and kind of broken, so I'm going to bring the white dot right there to the top right. And since this is not enough dirt, hold down Alt and drag to create another copy of this layer and drag it somewhere else so we have a bit more grain and texture going on. Also make sure while you're dragging that it's still a clipping mask, because on the right now you have two textures. Let's go into the layers panel and give them all a name to work kind of clean. And once you're finished, make sure to give our parental advisory a mask by clicking on this little mask icon right there. Now select B to get our brush tool and make sure the flow and opacity is on 100. Let's zoom in by using the zoom tool, pressing Z, and let's delete some portions out of our text. You have to make sure that the foreground color of the brush tool is black. And then make sure to draw on the clipping mask right there. As you can see, we are getting rid of some parts of the text so it looks even more distorted. Oops, that was way too much. Ctrl Z to go back. And yeah, there we go. Okay, so since we are finished with the parental advisory, let's drag in our eagle for this cover, which I showed you in the beginning. And once it's dragged in, make sure to drag it to the top and call it eagle, because we want everything to be nice and clean. Now press Ctrl T and hold down Shift again to drag it proportionally nice. Let's drag it a bit to the left by holding Shift and pressing the arrow keys, and confirm that change by pressing Enter. So now press W to get the quick selection tool so we can select the blue sky right there, and Photoshop does its magic to select everything. Of course you can see it's not perfect, but we're going to adjust this manually using the lasso tool or the pen tool. Make sure to select and click on each of the blue regions right here. And as you can see, the feather right here got selected as well, but hold down Alt, so the quick selection tool gets a little minus in it. This means that it is going to deselect this part that you just selected. And using the lasso tool, pressing L, you can actually add some parts of the mask or you can delete them. And as you can see, we're going to figure this out later on once we are having our mask ready. Now make sure that your eagle layer is selected and click on the mask icon to give our eagle a mask. So, what are these masks? Masks are basically a better way of erasing stuff in Photoshop. Masks offer you a non-destructive workflow. That means with a black brush you can delete certain parts of an object or of an image, and with the white brush, the vice versa of the black, you can basically bring back these parts again. So you're always having this normal image of you which isn't changed, but you are changing the mask, but you're drawing on it with a black or white brush, and you can delete parts or bring them back again at any time in the program. While using the eraser tool deletes something of that image permanently, and you can only get it back by pressing Ctrl and Z. But if you're like 100 steps forward in your process, you can't simply press Ctrl Z because your program isn't saving so many steps and your changes are basically done and you can't go back, so you have to start from the beginning again or add it in manually. So make sure to always use masks, it's a good workflow. Okay, now let's zoom into our eagle, press L to get the lasso tool and make sure, press L and make sure to follow along the foot or claws. And there we go. I'm doing this all by using my mouse. Now press B and right click, crank up the size and draw over it so it gets white due to the mask right there. And we're going to do this with all the parts that have been missed because of the quick selection tool, because it only is a quick selection tool and you have to do the fine work. And let's select this one as well. Press L to get the lasso tool, follow along the shape. Make sure to close the path and draw over it with the brush tool. There we go, on the top left as well. Pretty straightforward, and our selection is good enough because we're doing a photo manipulation. The cutout doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to put on so much more stuff that the cutout edges won't be really visible at the end. Let's go to our properties. If you don't have this, go to Window, Properties, and now scroll down and click on Invert while having the mask selected. And boom, there you go. You can see our eagle right there cut out. On the top there was a little line left, so make sure to select the brush tool and delete this as well. And now we have these blue areas right here. So get our quick selection tool by pressing W again and make sure to delete them as well. Basically, most of the tools in Photoshop offer an alternate version. If you press Shift with the lasso tool selected, it gets a little plus attached to the icon, which means that the selection that you're now drawing gets added to the selection that you already got there. As you can see right here, I already selected the lower part and now I'm holding down Shift while having the lasso tool selected to make it one huge selection. And the same goes if you want to subtract something from this selection with the lasso tool, you just have to hold down Alt instead of Shift, and the little plus changes to a minus, so it gets subtracted. Just play around a little bit if you're not familiar with this, but actually I think this should be, or it is very basic and you should know this if you're following this tutorial. Or just read up on it and make sure to learn this skill because it's really essential. Now let's press P to get the pen tool to create this shape right here. Drag an anchor point out, click elsewhere or at the bottom. Make sure to drag it out so it's a smooth line. Then click on this anchor point with Alt or Option on Mac and make it a perfect straight line just like this. Then close the path again and right click on this path, make selection, don't change anything and delete this. I just wanted to do this because with the lasso tool it this would have looked really, yeah, kind of not so perfect right there, but you don't really need to use the pen tool in this tutorial, although I'm seeing it in the beginning, but it was just a joke, not too serious. Now let's double click on the mask of our layer right here and we get into the mask options. Make sure to click on view on layers and let's tweak the settings a little bit to get a better selection. Make sure to select the smart radius and crank up the radius according to your cutout. I'm going to put it on 2 pixels because I think that gives me a little bit better results, and make sure to crank up the contrast to make it a little bit more sharp. And also bring down the shift edge so the whole selection gets a little bit smaller and little bits and pieces are getting deleted as well. You can also check decontaminate colors to kind of change the edge colors from the blue to a darkish gray. But all these settings are now up to your cutout and what image you have used. Because yeah, it really depends on the image and the edges that you've cut out. Feather and smooth are pretty self-explanatory. Contrast is for the sharpness, shift edge to shrinken or make a bigger selection, and yeah, the rest is explained already. So let's check out how it looks. Yeah, very minor difference actually, but yeah, I think we should leave it like this. As you can see, the feathers right here are a bit round, but you can increase the contrast if you wish, but you guys got more time to adjust this. I'm just going to show you the tools. Okay, let's crank up the contrast real quick to make it more sharp. There you go, you can see it very obvious now. The feathers are way sharper now. Okay, let's zoom out and yeah, we can continue now. Let's create a black and white filter and make it a clipping mask to our eagle right here. And let's also create a solid color. And I've previously chosen a color. Let me see if I can get it from the color picker. Make it a clipping mask as well and bring it to... Let's make it a bit lighter. I think it was somewhere around here, should be like it was 22333B. Okay, let's bring it down to color so that it adapts the color of our, or so that the color gets adapted to our eagle. Yeah, we're going to adjust this later on by using a color balance filter, but let's also give it some levels and make sure to crank up the lows, lower down the mids and bring down the highs as well so that the colors look kind of washed out. And this slider down there is very important. Make sure to drag it a bit to the right so the blacks are really washed out. Now let's create a new layer on top of our eagle, which is also a clipping mask. Select a color around the eyes and choose your brush. Make it really small so you can actually draw on the eyes. And then draw a round circle right on the retina of the eagle, so he kind of loses his eyes, and this gives it a very, yeah, mystical, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, it should be like this. If you've watched Vikings, you've seen a lot of animals and people without eyes, which make them very mysterious and cool looking. So let's add a brightness and contrast filter, and of course it's a clipping mask again, and adjust the colors a little bit. And let's call our layers right here eyes. And let's bring in our next image. And as I've mentioned in the beginning, you can find all the images or the links to the images in the description down below. So now make sure to go to our parental advisory and press I to get the eyedropper tool and select the red of our parental advisory advice there. Copy it and let's call our new image brush stroke, just like that. Create a new solid color, make it this red that we just selected and make it a clipping mask. Now let's change the blending mode to screen so it really adapts the color or hue. Let's check out, not screen, color I meant. Yeah. And let's bring down the opacity a little bit so it kind of looks really like blood. And yeah, something around 60 should be good, I think. That looks good. Now let's select the brush stroke. Whoops, wrong key. Select the brush stroke and press Ctrl and J or Command and J to duplicate it. And disable our first layer because this is just a backup. And now let's go to Filter, Pixelate, Mosaic. And I'm going to bring this in. And let's crank up the cell size to... yeah, I think 22 should be good. Yeah, 24. Let's use 25. And now press Ctrl T to scale it up a little bit more because it was too small. And now we can press T to get the text tool and add a little bit of text. Of course, it should be our red color again, so paste it in. We are using the font Tox typewriter. And I'm going to type out Travis Scott because this is what it is. In this tutorial, make sure to drag it up, and of course it shouldn't be a clipping mask, otherwise you won't see it, so make sure to drag it to the top and drag it right down to our parental advisory so that we have a consistent font size throughout the whole document, which always looks better instead of 30,000 different font sizes which all clash together. Alright, let's drag in our next image. It's a grainy texture and I've put it on top of our layers, but make sure to drag it down, hold it and drag it down so it scrolls down automatically in the layers panel right there, and make sure to bring it right to the bottom and change it to subtract so that all the colors get switched up from black to white and white to black. Let's see, there's a white background around our brush stroke, but some blending modes will get rid of the, pin light is the perfect one, as you can see right there. So now let's select our eagle again, so that if we bring in the texture right here, it gets pasted right in front of our eagle. Okay, now let's shrink down our texture right here a bit. And I'm shrinking it down because if you would crank it up, the resolution would be very bad. Also make sure to make it a clipping mask so it's only on our eagle. And I'm just going to show you the techniques in some steps. Let's first see how it looks if we change or cycle through our blending modes. But once we copy the textures, I'm going to put it back to normal. We are now using this texture and copy it several times to create a seamless texture, because grain is really seamless. You can't tell where the seam is. That was a rhyme. Now change back the blending mode to normal, press V to get the move tool and hold down Alt and drag it to the right to create a copy of that texture. Now select both layers and hold down Alt and Shift again so it copies these two layers again. Shift makes it move only in a vertical position. Now select all four textures, right click, convert to Smart Object. Smart objects. So what are these smart objects? Smart objects basically act like layers and they contain image data from pixel or vector images from apps like Photoshop or Illustrator, and these smart objects preserve the data from the image, and the image itself doesn't get changed, but you can alter the smart objects. For example, put a mask on it and then change the background or anything you want, or you can put certain colors on it, but it only affects the smart object, and you can always click in it again and it acts like a new Photoshop file within your Photoshop file. The main image doesn't get changed or anything. This also allows you a non-destructive workflow just like the masks, and it's awesome. Make sure to read up on smart objects because it's a huge topic actually in Photoshop. So if you now double click onto this smart object, you can see our 4 copies of the textures right here. And you can use the spot healing brush tool and actually rasterize them in here, or we can close this, right click the layer and rasterize this layer, and now we can use the spot healing brush tool and go along these weird seams right there that we've created by copying them and make it perfect. Now set it back to screen and our whole eagle has this cool texture which we've just added. Now add some color balance, make it a clipping mask as well, and let's drag out the blues to give it a more strong character here, to make it more bluish. Let's adjust the other colors as well. Yeah, that looks pretty fine. So let's go to our eyes layer, create a new one, and we're actually going to make them glow up a little bit. Call this layer eyes light. And let's draw. Make sure that the foreground color is white, and let's draw a nice circle around it, just like that. Yeah, that should be fine. Oops. Make it a clipping mask again. And if we're making it bigger by pressing Ctrl and T and now bringing down the opacity, you can see that the eyes are kind of glowing. It doesn't look too realistic. Maybe we could change the blending mode or increase the over brightness of the head to make it, or to sell this effect a bit better. And let's right click or press Ctrl T and then right click, warp, and make sure to drag it out to kind of match the shape of the head right there. As you can see right here, there's a cool line going on. And we're trying to get this effect. So as if the light of the eyes would get bounced off the head of the eagle. Now press Ctrl and J or Command and J and make it a clipping mask as well. So we've just copied this light layer and let's rotate it a bit to make it maybe a bit more realistic or make it look like it's glowing a bit better. If you're zooming out, it looks kind of okay. Maybe we need to adjust this a little bit more by using the arrow keys, the eyes, I mean, the light. Maybe crank up the eyes even. Yeah, really hard right here. I think this looks the best. Yep. Okay, so next up we're going to bring in our next grainy texture and or dirty texture, and make sure to bring it right on top of our eyes layer, because we want them to be included. Make sure that all of our top layers are clipping masks as well. Oh, here the eyes as well. Sometimes if you're putting in new layers, Photoshop automatically doesn't make them a clipping mask again, so you have to do it manually again. So let's make our new texture, or let's change the blending mode of the new texture to subtract. And let's bring down the opacity a little bit, or maybe it's even good like this. Let's check it out. Yeah, let's bring it down a bit. How does it look with soft light? Maybe even better. And as you can see, our brush stroke has some weird redness going on right there. A little bit of red. And somehow, let's see if we black this out. Now, okay, this doesn't change anything. So what we need to do here is, if you just put a mask on it, you're actually deleting these rectangles right there, the pixelized rectangles. So make sure to get rid of the effect, delete the mask as well, and rasterize it. And now let's use the eraser tool actually to delete these kind of red, a bit of redness going on right here. We can now use the eraser tool because this can be permanent. We don't need a mask right here. And yeah, make sure to erase everything out of this. Let's go back to filter. Where do we have it? Pixelate, mosaic. And this time let's crank up the size to around 30, and we can still see that we have some weird red squares going on right there. So make sure to delete them as well with the eraser tool. Maybe make the size a bit smaller so we can catch them all. Of course, you can put some more time in it again, but I'm just doing this very roughly and you can't really see it anymore, so that's fine as well. Let's drag in, oops, wrong texture. Let's click on the text and drag in another texture. So if we drag it, if the text is selected and we drag it on there, it's going to put this new texture over the text. So sometimes this screws up the clipping mask. Make sure to check that out always. Let's change the blending mode of our new texture to linear dodge add. And as you can see, it really sells the effect now. but the resolution is bad again, so let's use the technique which we've used before. Press V to get the move tool, hold down Alt to copy this, and use the keys right here, the arrow keys, to get rid of the seam that you can see right there. Select both, copy them again, select all four and make it a smart object, then rasterize the smart object and change it to normal so you can see the seams, and use the spot healing brush tool by pressing J to get rid of the seams. So it looks really like one unique high resolution texture. And if you now change it back to linear dodge add, you get a high resolution grainy texture right there, made out of a normal resolution scaled image. Now let's create a new color layer right there. Oops, make sure to make it a smart object. I've called it stroke. And press Ctrl T and hold down Alt and drag it together so it makes a normal stroke. Press Ctrl T again and Alt so it scales it proportionally. Well, now let's drag in a watercolor stroke texture just like this, rotate it, and let's flip it horizontal so it fits perfectly onto our white stroke that we've just created there, or white rectangle. Now right click, create clipping mask so it fits perfectly on it, and press V to get the move tool and use the arrow keys to move it a bit to the left. Okay, now let's select them both, or wait. We want to adjust the colors, so let's grab everything from our texture and hold down Alt while dragging these layers onto our stroke right there, and make sure it's a clipping mask, and boom. The stroke adapted to the color of the eagle, and let's disable our levels because this looks perfectly like the eagle color and it blends together real good, so make sure to delete this. And now let's also grab our text, duplicate it, hold down Alt and drag it around to duplicate it, and let's write eagle eyes because this is going to be our name for the song, for the single that's going to be released, and that's going to have this cover. Of course, only imaginary. And yeah. Okay, so next up, let's go to our background layer, or the grainy texture in the background. And let's bring down the opacity a little bit, or even, yeah, let's give it a mask right here. And click on our brush. Oh, that was too much, and make sure to turn down the opacity to around 50 and get rid of the strong areas where the grain is too much. Oops, that was also too much. With X you can switch up the foreground and background color from black to white or white to black. Okay, let's give our stroke a mask and make a really small brush. Select the brush tool, right click, and then make it really small, and make sure that the opacity is to 100, set to 100, and the flow as well. And let's give our brush, like the background, this little stroke right there. Let's give it a very rough edge right there that looks really, yeah, used. Just go along the edges with the brush tool and make sure that it looks really vintage. Also the same for the top part. And also the same for the left part. Let's zoom out with the zoom tool. Yeah, it looks way better already, don't you think? Okay, next up, let's drag in our images of Travis Scott. Oops, that was the wrong direction, the wrong position. Let's click on the eyes because we want them to be visible, but we also want Travis Scott to be in that eagle. And yeah, drag it in, make it a clipping mask. Or it automatically gets one if you drag it in over the eyes in the layers panel. Let's rotate the image a bit because you can see the shape of his head and the cap and also his neck are lining up perfectly with the wing of the eagle. So let's make sure to put him right into this position so it looks really organic. Use the shift key and the arrow keys to kind of move it to the right position. Let's drag and let's grab our brush tool and delete some of the portions of the background of the Travis Scott image. And as you can see, this image originally also has no retina or pupil, I think it's called. And yeah, let's continue with deleting the background. Just like this, and for the smaller portions, let's grab a smaller brush, so bring this down a little bit. And go alongside the dreads and his face. Looks super good, maybe here at the top where you can see the edge. And I'm doing this to kind of blend him into the eagle a little bit more, so that the edges of the two layers aren't too visible, like from Travis Scott and from the eagle itself. So if we turn this on and off, you can see it blends in really well. Maybe we should adjust the color a little bit, because Travis is a bit more brightened in this case right here, so make it a smart object, or actually no, Ctrl Z to go back. Let's first of all move our mask to another layer, then right click and make it a smart object, and then move the mask back again. Because now we can actually go in here and change the levels live, just like this, and you can now save it and it will be adapted in this right here. Just like as I've mentioned in the smart object subsequence. Okay, so since we've adjusted the levels, it blends in even better, as you can tell, or as you cannot tell. There's no visible line anymore and it looks really blend in. So next up, let's grab Travis and make him a bit smaller, because I don't like that he's intersecting with the eagle eyes text right there. And I think the position for the text is very perfect, so maybe just drag it down a little bit. I don't know. I think here it looks the best, since this text really adds to the design, and yeah, let's leave it like this. So if you turn off, let's first of all give this a name, because we also want to work really clean, calling this grain texture, which is this. This is the eagle white grain, and this is Travis. Top left, because we're going to add another image of him right to the wing right there, or the white wing at the back of the eagle. So the top one is document grain, and make sure to save, and let's drag in the next image. There we go. This one needs to be, whoops. Wait, I'm going to drag it in again. Always make sure to hold down shift when you're scaling up images so they constrain their proportions, otherwise they will look really squashed and stretched, and this is ugly as hell. I really hate this. So let's, oh dang, go back and make sure that it's a clipping mask. Let's position it right where it could fit. What I really like about the images that I've chosen is that they perfectly fit into the eagle. Like the top left image personally looks really good at the eagle's wing on the top left, and this one is really more bright and it fits to the white feathers of the eagle right here. So let's give this Travis Scott image right here a mask and choose our brush again and make sure to get rid of the background. Whoops, I really want to keep the dreads because they look really good and I think it could add some detail to the white feathers, so make sure to clean all of this up, like the background. You could also use the lasso tool again, but since this is so much blending in and all that, you don't really need to use the lasso tool too much. For the dreadlocks, I'm going to use it real quick, or actually I think they are called braids. There we go. Make sure to get rid of all of the background colors right there. As you can tell right now, it looks really sharp, so go in with a small brush and make sure to cover up the edges or blend them in with the background. I'm going to fast forward this so you're not getting too bored right here. And there we go, looks perfect. top there's also a bit more to finalize, so go in here and get rid of the background color as well. Just like that. And now the only part missing is this left part right here. It's the same process, just grab your brush tool and make sure to delete the background. Of course, with your mask selected. Alright, now since we've got this cut out, it looks a little bit too small, so let's crank that up a little bit. Drag to the top left, and we also, there's a little weird part showing now. We also have to grab the brush tool again and make sure to get rid of all that. Okay, so since we've got this cut out, the only thing kinda important to me is to match up the colors. So maybe we can try to give the Travis Scott images a bit of a black and white filter. So let's go into the smart object, black and white, save this, and let's see. Okay, that didn't change anything. Ah yeah, because we got this black and white there already. Yep. That was a no-brainer, so you don't need to put the black and white in there, but let's see. Okay, actually, let's go to our background and add back a little bit of the detail which we've got rid of in the beginning. So make sure to grab your brush with a white color, and you can press X to switch between the foreground and the background color, and make sure to adjust the opacity kind of according to the strength of the grain texture. So I'm just going to add in a bit more texture a bit, or make it more even. Okay, the only thing I'm missing here is also a bit more dirt. So I'm going to drag in this texture right here, which offers a lot of dirt. And well, now I'm going to show you the effect which is called Dispersion, or you may know it already as Dispersion. Make a new layer and go to Image, Apply Image, and make sure to just hit OK. So all of our layers get merged into one layer. Now make sure to rasterize our dirt texture right here. Go to Select, Color Range. This pop-up will come up, and now make sure to select Highlights, because we want the whites right there, the white dots. If you bring in the fuzziness a bit, you're going to get a lot of not so strong points. They're very fuzzy and round or smooth. And if we increase the range, we're getting a lot more strong points, and this should be fine, yeah. Now hit OK, and as you can see, it's selected all of these white points. Now go to our image that we've just created, or the merged image, and click on the mask icon. And now it created a mask out of these small white dots. And if we create a white background on top of all of our layers, you can see them actually, just for showing it. Make sure to invert that mask. First of all, yeah. Get rid of our white background that we've just created, and let's drag down our dots right here. As you can tell, if you drag them around, you now have these colored dots which are made out of our merged image, our actual cover. And they really add to it. As you can see, the text gets a lot of red pixels around it, which really makes it look typical vintage, as if the printer had made a mistake. And if we drag it behind our brush, it may look even better. I don't know, let's see, but the text is losing a lot of detail. Nah, that's not good. Let's drag it up a bit over our brush again. Perfect. I really like this. And if you want even more of that dispersion effect, you can add a texture with a lot more bigger white dots, or even use a real Photoshop brush to create a even bigger dispersion effect. Let's grab our text and go to the paragraph setting and make it really thick, because it looked so thin in comparison to the Eagle Eyes font. And now let's finally zoom out and check for the little bits and pieces that we can correct right here. So let's add a levels filter on top of all this to kind of match up the colors a little bit more. Yeah, if we drag here, we can even bring in some more detail to the background. And let's also wash out the blacks a little bit, or I don't know, maybe that's, yeah, let's just leave it there. And yeah, we're almost finished. The only thing that's missing now is a bit more tweaking. You can add a color lookup and play around with the different settings there. And yeah, I hope guys you really enjoyed this tutorial. Leave a comment, like and subscribe if you do. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. I offer different stuff on each of these social medias. And if you have suggestions for new tutorials, make sure to hit me up on Facebook. See you in another tutorial. ArmaganVideos.
We got the Parental, yeah, yeah. We make the Travis Scott cover.